From the New York Times, this is The New Washington. I'm Michael Barbaro. Today, Representative Nancy Pelosi.
I accept this gavel. It's an historic moment for the Congress. It's an historic moment for the women of America.
We honor the service of our troops by asking the difficult questions about this war. For too long, this government has followed a right-wing ideology of anything goes, no supervision. Social Security, Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, it's here to stay. Most Americans don't know who their member of Congress is, but they will now when they find out that you voted to take away their health care. But I do have boundless energy, and I do attribute it largely to chocolate. Very, very, very dark chocolate. Early in the day, the better, and to being Italian-American, which I think is a source of energy that people just don't understand.
Carl Hulse, who did you talk to this week?
Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, the Democratic leader, and of course the former speaker and first woman speaker in history.
Turns out to be a very big fan of chocolate, it seems.
Yeah, that's all she eats. I'm not sure I've ever actually seen her eat other food. We once ate Dove bars together, and she ate hers with a knife and fork.
What?
Yes.
I was just doing that because a gentleman was in the room. Usually I just bite it off.
Carl, why Nancy Pelosi this week?
This was an important week for the Democrats. They managed to fend off this last gasp attempt to repeal Obamacare. I mean, I think that they were celebrating by Democrats this week.
The repeal effort has given itself up. Although it is like a zombie, it just keeps coming out of its grave.
The tax bill is also being rolled out, so they're looking at that pretty warily. So there was a lot going on that involved Nancy Pelosi this week.
Right, they've got a big victory under their belt, and they're looking at the next big assault, they think, of their values in the Congress.
Yes.
We're ever vigilant. That's why we're confident. We're ever vigilant.
How many terms has Nancy Pelosi been in Congress?
I think she was first elected in a special election, I want to say 1987, and then elected to a full term in 88. So she's been there for a while.
30 years.
That's correct.
And the district she represents, it's not just a district in California. It is what many people regard as like the center,
the epicenter of progressive liberalism.
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Yes, that is her district.
Okay. And she is very closely associated with that kind of liberal urban politics.
Right. I mean, you could honestly hear Republicans calling her that San Francisco liberal Nancy Pelosi.
The pride we took in our own heritage, Italian-American, led us to respect the pride that other people took in theirs, whatever that was. And so in California, which is magnificently and beautifully diverse in terms of ethnic background, gender identity and orientation, religion, all the rest, it was easy to be respectful because we respected who we were ourselves.
But she's really not from San Francisco.
Where is she from?
She is a daughter of Baltimore.
I'm going there tonight, and I was there a couple weeks ago. My family is still there. My family lived in that house until my parents passed away. So when I go back to Little Italy.
And she grew up in a very political family. And your dad was the mayor?
My father is the mayor. My brother was the mayor.
Mayor, too.
But when I was born, my father was in Congress, and then he became mayor when I was in first grade. And when I went to college, my whole freshman year of college, he was still the mayor of Baltimore. So that was the life we led, about public service being a noble calling, that we had responsibilities to each other in the community.
Catholic childhood, and learned a lot of lessons about politics from her family.
What were those?
Well, I mean, one of the things she said was that know how to count, know where the votes are.
You know, if you're going to succeed in politics, the vote is the currency of the realm. You have to know how to count.
Nancy Pelosi is considered an expert at knowing where the votes are.
What are some of the standout moments in her career?
Well, just simply being elected speaker has to be considered a phenomenal moment.
The tellers agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 435, of which the Honorable Nancy Pelosi of the state of California has received 233. the Honorable John A. Boehner of the state of Ohio has received 202. Therefore, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi of the state of California is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 110th Congress, having received the majority of the votes cast.
You've got to the highest position a woman has held in the federal government.
Pretty exciting.
So what was
That's
that
pretty
like?
exciting, I have to say. I never really thought that our country was far more ready for a woman president than this Congress would be for a woman speaker. Speaker is, just so people know, is the third highest position in our country. President, vice president, Speaker of the House. The second in line to the presidency, God forbid that would ever be necessary. And so it is a constitutional office. And but I was tired of losing. We kept losing elections, so I had a plan for how we would win. And when I did, then I was called upon to be Speaker of the House. Pretty thrilling. So again, in this institution, which was rock-ribbed male for centuries, when I was put forth to run, it was, well, it's not your turn. Other people have been waiting. I said, no, we've been waiting for over 200 years.
Just to be the first woman to sit behind the president during a State of the Union speech.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and the distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
I mean, it was big.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. And tonight I have the high privilege and distinct honor of my own as the first president to begin the State of the Union message with these words: Madam Speaker. In his day, the late Congressman Thomas D'Alessandro Jr. from Baltimore, Maryland, saw Presidents Roosevelt and Truman at this rostrum. But nothing could compare with the sight of his only daughter, Nancy, presiding tonight as Speaker of the House of Representatives. Congratulations, Madam Speaker.
When the Democrats won the House back in 2006, that set up a new dynamic where she had to work much more closely with President Bush, and vice versa. The White House had to work with Democrats really for the first time, and it was sort of a learning experience for them. And a lot of her focus at that time was the Iraq War, which she had opposed from the beginning.
So when we go in, the occupation, which is now being called liberation, could be interminable. And so could the amount of money, unlimited, that it will cost, $100, $200 billion. We'll pay any price to protect the American people. But is this the right way to go?
And that's interesting doubly because she was the senior Democrat on the Intelligence Committee at that time. So she was actually very close to the intelligence around the Iraq War and was one of those who decided it didn't add up.
My biggest memory of her was during the financial crisis when I believe it was Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson bent down on one knee and begged her to get the financial bailout bill passed.
Right. That was a very dramatic moment.
Let me make clear, this entire proposal is about benefiting the American people because today's fragile financial system puts their economic well-being at risk.
And then, she was instrumental in getting the Affordable Care Act through and, said this was one of her proudest achievements. So let's talk health care a little bit. You were a crucial part of getting ACA through.
Thank you. I take pride in that.
Well, how involved was she? How crucial was
Yeah, she's
Pelosi?
very crucial. I mean, this took a lot of wheeling and dealing to get this through.
Writing legislation, passing legislation is...
she listed, the amount of hearings that they'd had and that it actually developed from a Republican proposal early on that Republicans had input. They just ended up not voting for it.
We had, over 200 hearings, public meetings, and all the rest. We reviewed about a couple hundred, or at least 100 Republican amendments, same number of Democratic. We accepted some, we rejected some, we modified some. And many of the Republicans got their amendments in the bill. They just weren't going to give it their vote.
What's it been like for Pelosi to watch Republicans, especially in this Congress, try to repeal the Affordable Care Act time after time after time? I think it was like 3 times at least in this last year alone.
Yeah, but there's been, dozens and dozens of other votes in the House. I think it's probably infuriates her.
It's one of the very clearest indications of the difference of values that we bring, this group of Republicans bring to Washington, D.C. They really do not believe in access to quality, affordable health care. It's just the way it is. And they do everything to undermine it.
Of course, the Republicans would take issue with this, that they don't want quality health care. They would just say, this program's not working, and if you look, the exchanges are collapsing. And
well, that's not true. So, I mean, they can make them collapse, and they're trying to sabotage it. And some of the things that they've refused to do, like the reinsurance, which was a part of the bill, needed to be reauthorized. They said no. The cost-sharing provisions of it, the president has in doubt in that. But hopefully working in a bipartisan way, we can improve and update the Affordable Care Act. And we'll be open to other suggestions as well.
We'll be right back. Carl, you asked the minority leader about the president's tax reform.
so I'm taking it you're not behind the tax plan.
It's a notion.
Framework.
It's a notion.
What did you say about the particulars of the tax plan?
I mean, that there weren't enough particulars. I mean, it certainly doesn't explain yet how it's going to pay for itself.
Yesterday, we had a hearing. Richie Neal, our ranking member on Ways and Means, hosted a hearing.
She mentioned,
on,
that one of the
it was
founders
scheduled.
of the idea
And then,
that
as
tax
it
cuts can
turns
pay
out,
for
that
themselves
we
testified
were
for the
lucky.
Democrats at a hearing this week.
But we had Bruce Bartlett there, who was part of the supply side economics of Jack Kemp. And when we asked him, because the Republicans are saying, yeah, we'll add trillions of dollars to the debt, but the dynamic scoring, the growth that will come will bring that back. And we said to him, is that true? He said, it's not true. It's nonsense. In fact, he went so far as to say it is BS, saying the whole words.
Oh, he said the whole word.
He said the whole words.
You can say that on a podcast if you want to
But
go
I
there.
don't say it even in my privacy of my own
You really
home.
Pelosi doesn't like to curse.
Yeah, she's a very proper person, and that is just unmistakable quality about her. So how do you deal with now today, the president has said this doesn't help the wealthy. The chairman of the Economic Council says this isn't anything for the rich. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of information out there that it is. How do you deal with that kind of situation where people are perhaps not being perfectly honest about what the bill does or doesn't do?
The Republicans have been selling, this is in their DNA. They have been selling the public a bill of goods of trickle-down economics for a long time. It's never worked. It's never created jobs, reduced the deficit, or created growth. But it's in their DNA. Some of the people who support the Republicans, no matter what, even if they care about the air their children breathe, climate, immigration, guns, women's right to choose, LGBT, you name it, that's not dispositive of their vote. Their vote means I don't want to pay taxes. And that's why they vote Republican. And so this is who they are, and that's what they come here to do. And they always say the same thing. It's going to grow the economy. It's going to create good-paying jobs. It's going to. They don't say it's going to reduce the deficit. I often wonder what happened to the budget hawks. They're an endangered species because you can't possibly support what the president, what McConnell, and Speaker Ryan are putting forth, and say legitimately that this is going to increase.
I saw that
reduce the deficit.
We had a quote. From
this
is the point she's trying to make. When a Democratic president is in the White House, Republicans constantly complain about the growth in the federal debt and the deficit. And then when Republicans get in, say Reagan, Bush, and now Trump, they seem to forget their commitment to reducing the debt and the deficit and push ahead with tax cuts.
Pelosi, as we've discussed, has been in Congress for 3 decades. And so she told you that there are two reasons that she's sticking around the House.
One of the reasons I stayed here is because I thought Hillary Clinton would win. We'd have a woman president. And so there would be a woman not by the seat at the table, but at the head of the table for the world.
But you haven't made the progress then that you think you should have made, right? That
Well, we're never satisfied. We're never satisfied. We wanted to have a woman president, but when we didn't, then I couldn't walk away and say, okay, just let all the men have the seats at the table that are making decisions for our country. But I'm proud of what the Democrats have done, and in the Senate as well. But we want more. Nothing is more wholesome for our political process and for our government than to have the increased participation of women. Democrats and Republicans are declined to state whatever they are, because it really makes a difference. It doesn't mean women are better than men. It just means you have to have the mix. The beauty is in the mix.
Yeah, I think this was a notable remark by her. She had indicated previously that, if Hillary Clinton had won, she might have stepped aside. But in our interview, she went a little further and said, I wanted to stay to make sure there was a woman at the table, that if I left, maybe there wasn't going to be one. But she also said, wanted to stick around to protect the Affordable Care Act, which is really her baby. Let's talk midterms here a little bit. You've got an opportunity. Yeah. What are the chances of the Democrats taking back the House?
Very excellent. And I say that, but I would not have said it like 6 months ago, because 6 months ago, we would not have known what the president's number would be in October. I always say to people, just see where the president, whatever party is, a year before the election. And Clinton, he won, we lost. Bush, president, his numbers went down, we won. Obama, his numbers went down, they won. And now this president, we don't even have to take his numbers down. He is self-immolating. And so at this point is when, if any of your listeners were planning to run for Congress or office, any office, and the president of your party was below 50 or 40, you might say, I'll run another time.
So her argument and belief is that Donald Trump's relatively low popularity numbers around the country actually keep Republicans from running for Congress or from running for re-election.
Certainly running for Congress or jumping in, and some are deciding not to run again. We're seeing that in both the House and the Senate. It's going to be a tough time for them, and you're hearing all this bubbling up about primaries from the right for a lot of Republicans. So some folks are looking at it and washing their hands. How would Washington change if the Democrats won? I know some of your members want to immediately start impeachment, but what would that be like? Intense oversight? How would it be different?
Well, the one big difference between Democrats and Republicans that I mentioned earlier was that we do believe in bipartisanship. So you would see something different from what they did. We worked with President Bush, even though he took us into the war in Iraq on the basis of a falsehood. What could be worse than that? When they want to describe how bad President Trump is, what could be worse than that, and all that sprang from that?
I was struck by that. I mean, in her party at this moment, you can sometimes hear the sky is falling refrain, that there's something unique about the Trump presidency that they see as a threat and a menace. And what Nancy Pelosi is saying is, what could be worse than the second war in Iraq that I looked beyond, that I got over, and still worked with the president who caused it?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point, that she doesn't want to get out there now and say, hey, if we get the House back, we're going to impeach the president right away. That's not what she wants to be running on, because who do they need to appeal to? They need to appeal to independents, swing voters. Most Democrats see that as the smart political play right now. Nancy Pelosi is already used by Republicans as a cudgel against Democratic candidates. She doesn't want to add to that by saying it's not only Nancy Pelosi, but she's vowing to impeach President Trump. She's not going to go there. I think the members of Congress get that.
If they want to compare us, I would like the public to know that Paul Ryan wants to remove the guarantee from Medicare. I think that's really more important to people than whether I support LGBT rights, which is what that's their dog whistle, liberal from San Francisco. I'm very proud of that. And he's proud of the fact that he wants to remove the guarantee from Medicare. It's in his budget. So you want to compare what it means in terms of policy, let's do it.
In many people's minds, the Democrats have failed to connect with working class America's economic anxieties. And she talked about this reputation that the Democratic Party has for being associated with what critics of it would call identity politics, race, ethnicity, and sexuality.
I thought her answer was very interesting. First, she says, well, the Republicans do it because they're bankrupt and bereft of ideas. So this is the only way that they can win.
We have to have a very positive agenda on a better deal in terms of the economic security of America's families. That's really what the election is about.
But she did, to her credit, manage to a couple of times sneak in the new Democratic slogan and talking point of a better deal, where they're trying to show once again that they can appeal to blue-collar and economically struggling America. And yeah, I think the fact that they had to come up with that is an admission that they fell short the last time, and they need to improve along those lines. If you were able to get the House back and become Speaker, would you see that as a kind of redemption for yourself, that you were able to return to that after that defeat?
I don't need any redemption. I've been the first woman Speaker of the House of Representatives. I have been able to pass a bill that provided health insurance for 20 million Americans. I can go through. Well, self-promotion is a terrible thing, but somebody has to do it, I guess, and I'm happy to do it if nobody else will. No, I'm very proud of what it is. It isn't about me becoming Speaker. It's about the 1 in 5 children in America who lives in poverty. It's about the fact that the president's in denial about climate. It's about the fact that gun safety is something the American people support, but we can't get a vote on. It's about a woman's right to choose. It's about LGBT issues. So it's about that. But most importantly, all of those things are part of who we are. But in terms of our relationship with the public, it's about a better deal. Better jobs, better pay, better future. Equipping families with the tools to take them to their place into the future. And the economy is what it's all about. The rest of it is, again, part of our value system. But the election's going to be about the economy.
I think this is a good time to confess that I'm literally staring at 2 empty Ghirardelli chocolate squares that I have just consumed. Milk chocolate, for the record. Carl, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
The New Washington is produced by Michael Simon Johnson and Michaela Bouchard. Brad Fisher is our engineer. Lisa Tobin is our executive producer. Samantha Hennig is our editorial director. Our theme music is by Jim Brunberg and Ben Lansford of One Day. That's it for The New Washington. See you back here next weekend.